You're watching the CNBC-TV18 budget verdict. It is now time for the grand finale. Joining us here on the budget verdict stage, we have a power-packed lineup of the budget makers as well as key policy makers. Please join me in welcoming the CEO of the NITI Aayog, Parameswaran Iyer. Mr. Iyer, could we have you join us on stage, please? Also with us, the chairman of the CBDT, Mr. Nitin Gupta. Mr. Gupta, could we have you join us on stage? The chairman of the CBIC, Mr. Vivek, Johri, also here with us on the CNBC-TV18 budget verdict. Also with us, the DPIIT Secretary, Mr. Anurag, Jain. Mr. Jain, could we have you join us on stage as well? And the MNRE Secretary, Mr. Bhupinder, Bhalla. Gentlemen, thank you very, very much for joining us here at the CNBC-TV18 budget verdict. Appreciate your time and thank you for being here with us in the concluding session of the CNBC-TV18 budget verdict. Mr. Iyer, let me start by talking to you, and the microphone is right next to you, sir. You know, when we last spoke, you said that you believe that this is a bottom-up budget. It's a budget that has delivered on the aspirations of every constituency across the country. What, to your mind, has been the biggest force multiplier as far as the budget announcements are concerned?
Well, I think there are a couple of things, Shireen. One, of course, is the huge investment in capex, you know, that huge increase of 10 lakh crores. In addition to that, the continuation for another year of the 50-year interest-free loan to states. So extending that and actually incentivizing the states as well to come in with their own capex and attracting private investment. I think those are going to be key. But then if you know, that's going to have huge positive spin-offs in terms of jobs, employment, etc. But the other part of the budget, which I think is equally important, is the thrust on the social sector. And that's pretty much where NITI Aayog is working with states under the State Support Mission, which was referenced by the Finance Minister yesterday, of taking development right down to the grassroots level. How can states create their own state institutes of transformation like NITI? How can they move from planning to development strategy and really take it down to the block level? And perhaps one of the most significant features of the budget was the focus on inclusion, the particularly vulnerable tribal groups, PVTG. So this new mission which has been announced is actually for the tribal community, the bottom rung of the tribal community, 15,000 crores, 3-year in mission mode to give them, provide basic services. I think that was a very, very significant announcement of inclusion.
Mr. Jain, let me come to you because, you know, as I said, a large thrust on ease of doing business, reducing compliance, as well as encouraging private sector participation across a whole host of industries. I wanted to get your comments and your assessment on where things stand as far as a couple of government schemes are concerned. PLI, various schemes across 13 sectors in various, various forms of rollout at this point in time. Which are the ones that you feel satisfied with, where the progress you feel satisfied with? Where do you believe there is distance to be covered and work is underway to ensure that you push things along? Let me start by asking you about PLI before I get to Gati Shakti.
PLI, as you know, is one of the most important schemes for giving thrust to the and creating global champions. The way we look at it, the sectors which we selected were basically based on whether there is a potential for a particular sector to create global champions in the country, whether this particular sector is of a strategic importance to the nation, or whether does it have a very high employment generation potential. So these are the three tests on which we actually consider a particular sector. But you'll have to understand the way PLI scheme operates. If in year 1, I give a particular approval to a particular company, it has to make investments.
Yes.
Investment cycle takes time. So typically in most of the schemes, the investment period granted is 1 year or 2 years, depending on the choice of the company which wants to take the benefit of the PLI. So suppose it takes 1 year benefit. It wants to complete the investment in 1 year. So in the year 2, it will make the investment. Year 3 will be the base year of production.
Okay.
So year 4 will be the claim. So what has happened, some of the news items said that only 15% of the investment has taken place, only 3-4% of the money has been claimed. So let me put it straight. What has happened in most of these schemes, the investment is supposed to be completed over a period of 4 to 5 years. Say typically in a scheme, I say 15% of investment is the benchmark for year 1, 35% is year 2, 65% is year 3, 100% is year 4. So at the end of first year, how much would be the investment? 15%. If you put 15 in the denominator, it will be a 100% performance. And if you put 100 in the denominator, it will be a 15% performance. So in the first year, the actual performance, if you put in the denominator, the target for the first year, it was 106%.
Okay.
Similarly, on the claims. So the schemes have actually started in different periods of time.
Yes.
So this year, we expect by March that out of 14 schemes, 7 would have got their first claims, especially which were the early birds would make larger claims. So most of the schemes are by and large, there are certain minor hiccups which are there in implementation of any scheme. So concerned departments are continuously hand-holding all these investors, and I hope that, the way CEO NITI and I, we normally coordinate and review at our level, and then there's an empowered committee which is chaired by the cabinet secretary, that also reviews. Invariably, it's only minor hiccups, no major hiccups.
Ms. Iyer, let me get you to comment on that as well. Minor hiccups, no major hiccups. And thank you again, Mr. Jain, for explaining how the PLI scheme, the incentives and the claims work, because often that's not understood. And he's absolutely right in pointing out that there have been different rollout timelines across different schemes. We started with pharmaceuticals, and of course that was the very first PLI scheme to be rolled out. And then of course there was the COVID uncertainty as well. But in your assessment, what has been the biggest factors that are working as far as these 14 schemes are concerned?
I think first of all, Shireen, like Anurag said, I think the first factor is the selection of these 14 sectors. That itself has been very significant. And then of course, it's the industries coming forward, the very close monitoring, and I think the hand-holding and the facilitation for the industries, coordination with the state governments, getting the land acquisition, the electricity, the water up and running. And we do a very close monitoring. And so already about 800 crores, 800 worth of incentives have already been approved. We expect 3,000 to 4,000 crores before the end of March. And of course, the earlier sectors, pharma, mobiles, they're moving quicker. And I think others are learning from that process. So it's well underway, and we're very optimistic about how this program is going to transfer made in India and manufacturing in strategic sectors in India.
You know, one of the...
Sir, may I just
yes, please, sir.
Two things. Sir, what happens is the simplicity of the scheme is very important. The claim is dependent only on the production and nothing else. So that is very easy to verify with the GST, tax registrations, etc. So there are no administrative complexities involved in passing the claims. That is one of the biggest and important factors to my mind.
And you're absolutely right. That is a big factor, and certainly a big factor as far as industry is concerned. But Mr. Bhalla, let me come to you. One of the areas identified as a priority area has been the energy transition. This has been a budget that has identified the green focus, and an allocation of 35,000 crores, if my memory serves me right, has been made for the energy transition to OMCs, etc. You know, I want to understand from you, there's been a significant distance that's already been covered, especially when we talk about renewable energy. How confident are you feeling at this point in time as the world also makes this shift about India's own goals and aspirations?
Yeah, as you know, India has set a target of meeting 50% of its installed capacity, electricity installed capacity by non-fossil fuels by 2030. We have, right now we are at around 42%. Of the installed capacity, of the current installed capacity. Of course, looking at what our target is of how the energy would grow, we expect that we will need to add about 200 gigawatts or something of that sort of renewable capacity in the next 7 years. So it will be a spread of solar, wind, hydel, and bioenergy, and so on and so forth. Our expectation is, and what we are moving very confidently towards is, over the next 7 years, we will achieve 500 gigawatt. In fact, while we have internationally committed to install 50% of our installed capacity from non-fossil. But Prime Minister has set a target of 500 gigawatt. So that's what we are aiming at, and we are very confident of achieving it.
What is the constraint or the challenge that you believe you're faced with in being able to get to that target? Mr. Gadkari was here and he said, capital for me is not a problem. I have enough and more of it. How much of a factor is capital, and what are some of the other constraints that could get in the way of you being able to get to the 500 gigawatt target?
See, if you do the numbers, I mean, we have estimated that we will need about 23 lakh crore of investment in renewables for the next 7 years to reach the target. And of course, part of it would come from equity, part of it would come from, the balance would come from a combination of debt instruments as well as bond market. Equity, we are very confident that the private sector would be able to achieve. As you know, we are actually the expansion of renewable capacity in the country has been spearheaded by the private sector. And the systems have been set are so robust, and there's so much of excitement when the new new bids are invited that I think there's no dearth of investments. In fact, a lot of international investment funding is coming in into the sector. So there will be, of course, financing will be one of the criteria one of the factors which would lead us to reach it, but it would not be a constraint as far as we are concerned. Second is, whether do we have the capacity to produce enough solar and wind equipment in the country. As you know, you've seen the last year what supply chain issues we faced, the prices which rocketed, not only in other sectors but also in renewables. But with, as Anurag just mentioned, the PLI scheme, for example, for solar, we have already done PLI 1, which we've already awarded it an integrated capacity of about 8.7 gigawatt of from polysilicon to solar module is what was awarded in PLI 1. As was mentioned, our capacity, in fact, I reviewed it today with the companies who were awarded, and it's absolutely on track. And by December 24, which is the 3-year timeline for our PLI, in fact, before that, we will have a fully integrated capacity of polysilicon to module produced in India as far as solar is concerned. And PLI 2 is now, we've called for bids. The bids are about to close, and that will add significant capacity to our solar manufacturing in India. In fact, looking at the numbers and looking at how these companies are actually adding capacity over and above what they have actually won, or whatever they plan to, bid for in the PLI 2, they are setting up very high giga capacity factories. We will be producing enough solar manufacturing in India after about 3 years. It takes about 3 years for it to roll out. By year 2026, we are expecting that we will be producing enough solar manufacturing in India to not only cater to our requirement, but also to export.
Mr. Jain and Mr. Iyer, you were both in Davos trying to talk to investors about the potential of the India growth story. And let me start by asking you, Mr. Jain, in light of all of the measures that have been taken, what was the feedback that you got about India's competitiveness, specifically from a manufacturing standpoint? Is there anything more tangible, specific steps that investors have put on the table that the government is working on?
I think this will be a pretty longish answer if you can, but...
Is that a long list of demands that has been made?
No demands, the kind of work which has been done. So first and foremost, I would say the kind of structural reforms which have happened, the policy governance reforms which have happened, add on that the rule of law which we have in our country, add on to that demographic dividend, add on to that the best part, talented youth of the country. So this is what is going to drive the India's growth for next 25-30 years. The startup story we all know. So all this growth will be driven by, to our mind, knowledge, innovation and sustainability. And our startup ecosystem is doing fantastically well on all these. They are providing frugal and innovative solutions to all these problems. So if you are solving a problem for India's scale, you are actually solving global problems. Next 4 billion people in the world, they are looking to those solutions. Like India's public digital infrastructure. That's marvelous. I don't need to get into this. That is something which is absolutely unique. Nowhere else in the world you have something similar. We have based all our systems on presence-less, cashless, paperless kind of systems. Plus, it is based on open source, open platforms, open network. So what happens, any new startup or any new person who wants to start his business, he can plug into this existing ecosystem. Rest of the ecosystem is provided by the existing system. So therefore, the entry barriers have been lowered substantially, and that is what is fueling the growth. So this is one aspect. The kind of solutions, when you are talking to Secretary MNRE, next important thing which is going to happen, there are companies in India which started as a startup, now they have really grown big, unicorns. The cost of 24/7 energy based on renewable energy, can you guess? 6 cents.
Wow.
This will excite the whole world. They have come out with designs. They are taking the renewable energy, solar, wind, everything, and using the pump storage with their improved efficiency design, which gives 81% efficiency. And they are giving firm power for 24/7. The real problem with renewable energy is this, that it is available only at certain time of the day. So they are spreading the risk by putting the solar and wind both. Wind comes in generally in the night, solar comes generally in the day, plus the storage. So even it out. So these are kind of solutions which are coming. You talk of anything, what India's startup ecosystem or young entrepreneurs are doing, it is pretty exciting. So it is a technological revolution which is happening in India. So most of the people are looking towards India as the real next place to invest in. I mean, you would have heard the stories from IMF that as the brightest. So all those things are happening. So most of the people were excited in Davos. They were looking up to India to invest. And when we ask, there are very, very minor issues like FDI policy. India is one of the most open economies. The list where you cannot invest is not there, where you need government permission or you cannot invest 100%. That is just less than a page. So I can tell you with confidence that India's FDI policy is one of the most open FDI policies.
You know, you spoke a lot about startups, sir, and this is a subject close to my heart. I've been tracking it for 22 years now. So one of the big asks from the startup ecosystem is this business of linking the certification by the DPIIT that clears you to actually be qualified as a startup and then avail of the kind of benefits that the government is willing to put on the table. That process is taking very long. There are very few certified startups. When can we see that change?
That we have tried to improve the process. Earlier there was one committee which was taking it. So till about 3 months back, there are 2 major advantages which they are looking for. There are 3 levels of certification. First level of certification is that you just file and it's automatical, you get it automatically. So there are about 88,000 startups which have been registered. So there's no problem in that. Second registration is for angel tax, 56(2). There was some news items today that that has been done away. People are nervous about it.
No, it's just been parity. The non-residents have been brought.
No. The problem came from somewhere. So therefore, I would like to make that clear also on this count, that there is no change as far as startups are concerned. Anyone which has got a recognition of DPIIT for investing into that particular startup, the exemption under 56(2) continues.
Correct.
So that is there. So under that, more than 7,000 have got registered. There is absolutely no issue for 56(2). So first registration, which gives you benefits like GEM, startup, exemption from experience, net worth, turnover, criteria for participating in government tenders, that's available to everybody. This 7,000, I am sure there is absolutely no hiccup. When you apply, you get it automatically. So it is only that the rest of the people have not gone to that stage where they want angel investors to come in or whatever. The last one, which was for 80 IAC.
Yeah.
So by very nature also, 80 IAC is something which not many people apply because they have to grow big before they apply.
Right.
But still our process was slow, and that was a complaint. Against about 2,500 applications, only 400 odd had been cleared. So what we did, we have now created 10 parallel boards to improve the speed. So in the matter of last 2 months, the approvals have gone up from 400 odd to about 1,200. And hopefully by March or April, we would finish the 100% pendency because we have multiplied our force by 10 times.
10 times, well.
And by taking the benefit of the experts in the ecosystem.
Right.
So we have divided the work into 2 parts. One, people who look at the innovation part. One who look at the genuineness of the company. Both the inputs come, our committee automatically approves it.
Well, that's good news, and that certainly is going to be relief to many who are waiting for that clearance. But Mr. Iyer, you know, the sectors that you believe at this point in time are poised to be able to attract foreign capital specifically. Of course, the hope is domestic capital will start to flow in as well. But really, from a manufacturing standpoint, in the conversations that you had, where do you believe we're likely to be able to draw in the investment?
Well, Shireen, as I think Anurag has stolen most of my thunder on Davos. He's already said whatever needs to be said. But in the many private conversations which I had and all of us had, there's huge excitement about investing in India. And, you know, the sectors are the sunrise sectors, but in particular in the digital space, in green energy, there's huge enthusiasm. And I think for a couple of reasons. One is India's credibility in terms of delivering large projects at scale on time. So I think this government has got a phenomenal track record of delivery on the ground. And whether you look at infrastructure, you look at the 70,000 kilometers of road, the numbers are very big. And that was hugely impressive for many people who hadn't really understood the delivery at scale. 400 million bank accounts. You look at 2 billion vaccinations. And the ability to do this with quality and on time, I think that was very, very impressive, and that resonates. But the sectors are the usual. In addition to that, on the energy front, you know, our record in terms of our NDCs, we are actually walking the talk on our climate commitments, unlike many other countries in the world. And I remember that discussion you moderated on looking at the whole, moving from looking at the adaptation.
Mitigation to adaptation,
Exactly,
yes.
mitigation to adaptation, which was put on the table at Sharm el-Sheikh. So again, on that front as well, I think there's a lot of confidence that, particularly now with India hosting the G20 presidency, the importance of putting these issues on the table, the ability for India to lead the global south, these were all issues which really resonated. In particular, what really excited them was the sort of alternate climate agenda put forward by the Prime Minister on lifestyle for the environment, of how India can lead the world in walking the talk on climate.
Mr. Jain, you know, the expectation was that we would hear from the Finance Minister about the progress of the Gati Shakti program in the budget, but that wasn't the case. So let me address that issue with you on where things currently stand as far as the Gati Shakti plan is concerned, what you've been able to do in terms of speeding out infrastructure development, cost savings, time savings as well.
I think the budget was Gati Shakti budget. What is PM Gati Shakti? PM Gati Shakti is basically improving the infrastructure for logistic efficiency. So the allocation going up to 10 lakh crore, I mean, sir has already spoken, so I will not repeat all that. So that is what is the focus on infrastructure. What is PM Gati Shakti? PM Gati Shakti is way of operationalizing your schemes in a manner which is whole of government approach, sharing of data using technology, designing, I mean it's planning and decision making being much faster, much better in quality. That is what is PM Gati Shakti. So what we have done on PM Gati Shakti platform, we have 1600 GIS layers, which have all kinds of things. You have a 3D visibility of the earth, you have visibility of existing infrastructure, the road, rail, the water canals, the gas pipelines, the telecom lines, etc., whatever infrastructure. You have layers for forest, the mining leases which have been granted. You have GIS layers for the geological wealth which is underneath. So while you are planning your alignments for the infrastructure, you can make an optimized decision making. Like there have been examples where by realigning the project, the need for an forest clearance has been done away. So your project gets advanced by about 1 to 2 years. That's one part. Second important part in PM Gati Shakti framework is that we are putting the revenue layers also. All the states have been requested, about 12 states have already done it. Rest of the states are process of putting their revenue maps. So where the revenue maps are available. Say for example, I'll quote one. The road from Pune to Bangalore was being planned. So it passes through 30 different tehsils. So 30 tehsils means to create a land acquisition case, you have to go to different 30 tehsils if you go work the traditional way. Each case has to be made village-wise, so you finalize your alignment, you put on the map, find out who is the owner, and then come out. So it typically takes about 6 months to 1 year just to prepare the land acquisition case. Now, because the revenue maps are superimposed, actually it is a matter of hours that the output comes out. The case is prepared village-wise, name of the person, how much land, how much price it would, cost it would be for land acquisition, and the officer has to just sign it. So you gain in the DPR formulation, instead of 6 months to 1 year, it comes out in 2 months, 3 months. In case of land acquisition, instead of 6 months to 1 year, it comes out in matter of hours. So you are expediting, and the decision making is better. As I explained, you can avoid clearances.
Mr. Gupta, Mr. Iyer, Mr. Jain, Mr. Johri and Mr. Bhalla, what an absolute pleasure it has been. Thank you very, very much for joining us here on the budget verdict. Ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause for our guests here who've joined us to explain the priorities and the roadmap for the government going forward.
When it comes to making your drive